Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world away from the numbers.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of There's Still Time, the AFTN Soccer Show, broadcasting on CITR Radio 101.9 FM from the unceded Musqueam territory at the University of beautiful British Columbia. I'm Michael McCall.
I'm Steve Boosted Panther.
And I'm Zachary Adam Eisenhower.
Who's about to be boosted. I'm feeling left out here because you two guys are getting your booster shots this week and I have to wait till next Wednesday to get mine.
I'm on it right now, so I don't know what I'm going to be talking about today.
Oh, he's high as a kite. Yeah, if you could only see these visuals, he's stripped naked. I don't think it's anything to do with the booster, but it's just... It has got quite balmy here. Oh, actually, talking of the weather, how's things at Abbotsford, actually, Zach? Because I was watching the news tonight and it's not good there again with the flooding.
Yeah, my farmer friends are praying that Nutsack River does not overflow again.
Well, it's stopped. Here it's stopped, so I don't know what is there.
It was raining on my way home tonight.
Yeah. See, when your Nutsack just spills over.
Well, no, seriously, just someone. I know I'm not an expert on any of this, so I'm not. This is what I heard: is that basically the Nutsack River, which is across the border in the States, it needs to be dredged, right?
Yeah.
Because
they're
into it and stuff, and because there's been sort of environmentally friendly governors or whatever in Washington State, they've said they don't want to do it because one of the perspectives is that messes up the salmon, salmon spawn. But then I've also heard that
it potentially messes it up. It's not a confirmation.
Yeah, I've heard that you can do it at a certain time of year when it won't impact. Actually, will create new spots for them to spawn and whatever. Anyway, something needs to be done about that river, I think.
Oh yeah,
and that's the thing. You gotta basically instead of boxers, you gotta put briefs on that nutsack and be able to keep it contained.
Yeah, you want to keep it nice and tight.
Yeah.
But this is our second show of 2022, and it's going to be our last kind of year in review shows. We're going to be focusing in the second, third and fourth parts of this show on the year in Canadian women's soccer and some stuff that's going to be coming out in women's soccer as well. We're also going to... Yes. We're also going to be kicking things off with a look at our Whitecaps news of the week. But regular listeners will know that all of 2021, we started our shows by opening the gift that kept on giving until it gave no more, which was Steve's 2020 Christmas presents to Zach and myself, which was a box of Upper Deck MLS trading card packs. So we haven't got another box to open this year. Don't fret. But we do have an AEW Upper Deck. No, we don't. Although I did say to Steve that is a possibility. So what I've thought we might do, maybe not every episode, but for a lot of them, we're going to start off the shows with a chat about football TV and football movies. I'm bringing back an old section and revamping it, and we'll still do what we did in the section before, which was speak to some of the Whitecaps players and other players about their favourite TV shows and stuff. But it's time, for the first time in 2022, for TV OD. TVOD. 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 So what exactly is this new TVOD going to be about? Well, I want to kind of chat about some of the football-themed TV that is on some of the streaming services or over in the UK where there's obviously going to be a lot of shows, and I know folk have got access via various means to watch some of that. Maybe some historic TV things, some films as well. Might task you guys with watching a particular show or something for us to chat about in the weeks to come. But because this episode is all about women's soccer, or primarily about women's soccer, I thought I would kick off this section with a little chat about a 4-part biopic that I watched I think it was last week, maybe it was the week before, that was shown on ITV in the UK. Now, I'm not sure what streaming services it's going to be on. It might be on BritBox. It might appear on Amazon Prime, something like that down the line. But people that are interested in it just now can find it on ITV Hub if you've got a VPN and you regularly watch UK TV. It was a 4-part series called Anne. And it was a dramatisation of the life of Anne Williams, who was a campaigner for the Hillsborough disaster after her 15-year-old son went to the game and never came home. And it's a very harrowing watch at times, and I've got to say, every episode I had tears in my eyes at various points. The first episode in particular, if you do watch it, it's a tough watch. I was in floods of tears. But I just wanted to chat a little bit about that, and just about the Hillsborough disaster and stuff as well, because it was very interesting watching the documentary. I say the documentary. There was a documentary after the 4-part dramatisation of it, which was focusing on the life and times of Anne Williams as well. But the actual 4-part show, Anne. So it starts with her son getting a ticket to go to Hillsborough, and she wasn't going to let him go to that game because it was a semi-final and it was an away match and he was only 15. But the morning of it, she caved in to his moans and said, yep, you can go. And sadly, he never came home. Now, I don't think we've really talked about the Hillsborough disaster on the show very much, but I mean, what was your, how old were you guys when that happened, and what was your kind of recollections of how it was covered over here?
It was 89, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was 10 years old, and I was not into football until 93, 94. So it was not on my radar, not on my scale at all. Since then, I'm friends with someone who was there. And
oh, wow, really?
Yeah, I think I've told you before. I don't think you've met him, but yeah. So I've heard his stories about it. Usually maybe not every year, but usually around the anniversary, I'll send him a message, just let him know I'm thinking about him and praying for him. And yeah, I mean, it was tragic, and really, it's tragic for holistically, but just thinking about my friend, it really shaped him.
Yeah, that was one of the things which was mentioned a lot in the show. It's 97 people that have died now, because another person died last year that had been kind of in hospital since the disaster, and eventually he passed away. But also, it's the emotional and mental toll that is taken on a lot of the people that were there, and they still have to kind of carry that. And that was a tough thing as well, that was focused a lot on the dramatisation. How old were you, Steve, when that took place?
Not too far off from exactly, about 13. I believe 12, 13 or whatever. And essentially, I recalled stuff being on the news around that time. I think I saw it on American news, actually, if I'm not mistaken. It happened to be on a broadcast there. And so saw it on that. And then I do I haven't watched anything on it. Well, I watched a few clips here and there, but the main thing I've watched is the 30 for 30 documentary that ESPN put out maybe 3-4 years ago. It dealt with a lot of the what happened and everything. They dealt in a little bit of the personal stuff, but not too much, from my recollection. Obviously, they always put that human aspect in there, but they did a lot of it about the investigation of afterwards too, and the cover up and stuff like that. So it was a lot on that stuff. So that's what I basically see.
Yeah, I was at an East Fife game that afternoon, and we got word had come through, people that had brought their radios to the game, because that's what you did back then to kind of keep track of other games and stuff, and it slowly started to come through, and then you heard just how bad it was looking, but even that didn't do anything until you got home, and it was even really that night and the next day that the full ramifications of what had happened had played out. Now, I mean, there's been a couple of really good documentaries on it and a dramatisation called Hillsborough in the past as well. So this show that I'm talking about, Anne, it's a 4-part show, and it's focusing on Anne Williams' campaign to get justice for her son and the others that died there. And it touches on the cover-up and her constantly pushing to get new evidence and evidence allowed that was kind of forgotten about, and statements that was changed. And it's heartbreaking to watch what she went through. And they still haven't really got justice, because although in 2016 there was court hearings that said, yep, the police were ultimately the ones responsible and not the fans for opening the gate, no one was ever prosecuted. The main guy that was charged, his case fell through and then was retrialed, and he was found not guilty in 2019. And then the other people that were on trial, they got thrown out in 2021. So there's never fully been justice. And sadly, Anne passed away even before she got to that stage, which isn't a spoiler, I guess, for people that know her story for watching the show. But although it's harrowing to watch at times, I think it's very important for football fans to watch that, and for maybe younger ones that don't have a full understanding of what happened, definitely try and check it out. It's on ITV Player, ITV Hub it's called, so if you've got a VPN you can watch it on that. There's always other ways that you can watch things as well, as I'm sure various people know, and I'm sure it will appear on a number of streaming services as well. So a little bit of a sad way to start off the show, but it was just something I watched that had a very profound impact on me. I watched an episode a night, and I just think it's something that people should watch. So that is the start to our TVOD for 2022.
TVOD. I don't need a TV screen. I just stick the aerial into my skin and let the signal run through my veins. TVOD.
So let's get into the football chat now. The meat and potatoes of the show, unless you're on veganuary, in which case it's the tofu and potatoes, I guess. But we're going to kick off this part with the Whitecaps news of the week, because the Whitecaps kind of have 5 new players. Well, they picked 5 players in Tuesday's MLS SuperDraft anyway. So we're going to have a little look over that in this part and hear some audio from their first draft pick and from Vanni Sartini and Axel Schuster as well. So in the first round, the Whitecaps used their 16th overall selection on 22-year-old St. Louis University forward Simon Becher. The second round saw 21-year-old Ecuadorian midfielder Luis Felipe Fernandez Salvador from Clemson University. He was taken 44th overall. And 23-year-old American midfielder Giovanni Aguilar from California State University Northridge. He was taken 49th overall. And in the third round, so the Whitecaps select 21-year-old French forward Theo Colombe from the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, 72nd overall, and 23-year-old Brazilian midfielder Vitor Dias from Marshall University, who was taken 86th overall. So we'll chat about the players in a bit, but no defenders picked this year. 2 forwards, 3 midfielders, 2 or 3 internationals in there, because there's a little bit of confusion over the Ecuadorian guy, because he may also be classed as a domestic. We've had two different things issued with regards to that.
Zach saw a release that said Luis Felipe was international, but on their website, the Whitecaps have him listed as domestic and his citizenship as Ecuadorian and American.
Well, we'll go with that then.
Obviously, we'll have to clear that up if that is the case or not.
So it's probably just the Frenchman and the Brazilian then that's going to hold international spots, but we'll get into all of that. Now, obviously, some of these guys may disappear without trace, as we've seen in the past. What I decided not to do this year, like in previous years, I've kind of taken a deep dive into all our draft picks, and I've thought it's not even any point. Someone actually sent me a DM yesterday going, can't wait to read about your deep dive into these guys and get all excited about a player only to never hear from him ever again. So I thought I'm not even wasting my energy on that. We'll just see how they pan out. But I think with the MLS Next Pro team now incoming, it does give the club some roster depth, and it gives these guys a chance to kind of show what they've got without earning an MLS contract, so they can now play in this under-23 team and show what they've got. And it gives us some depth, especially in the midfield, and who knows how they'll thrive once in a pro environment, Steve.
Yeah, and maybe they pick the midfielders because they need to fill out those rosters because they know their strengths in the academy are in those other positions. Maybe they have more defenders in the academy that they want to play, so they're midfield depth, and that's why they need to fill that in. They do feel strong, like defensively, wingers and up front, and from what I've seen from the under 20 team, 23s and 19s. So yeah, I think it maybe does make a bit of sense. So I don't know too much about this. I know Simon Becher or Becher or whatever how you pronounce the name. He was rated highly by a lot of draft experts and the people that's seen college soccer. So he was like rated like by some people in the top 10. On the MLS site, it's rated as a very solid value. They really didn't have much to say about the two second and third players, but they really were glowing about Victor Diaz, feeling like he's one of the best attacking players in college soccer last year. So it's interesting to see how people actually give the Whitecaps a pretty high grade based on the late picks. Yeah, so it was
I think because they've gone for a couple of internationals as well, maybe other teams did shy away from them. But just what's your initial general thoughts on it, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, the things that stand out for me is that they took so many internationals, whether it's 2 or 3, it still feels kind of high. And 2, this it would make sense what you guys are saying in terms of filling out a roster for this Next Pro, MLS Next Pro thing, or squad, sorry. But it just feels weird. Like, I mean, Steve, you say this all the time at this time of year, and I think we all have said it at one point or another, that, I mean, the MLS draft is usually bears more fruit in center back, full back, maybe like winger.
That's where a lot of the early picks this year went as well from other teams.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that might be the thing, that the early teams took all those players and that allowed an attacking player like Becher to show up at the end of it. And maybe they just got it for depth. Maybe he himself will only play in that next team and won't be in the main roster as well. Maybe they're not looking. Maybe none of these players will be. The thing is, last year we all had their top pick being the number one guy.
Yeah, I mean, Egbo, and we still haven't really seen him with injuries being put out on loan. So, I mean, you have to feel him and Becher are going to be fighting for a roster spot. Egbo obviously has it just now, but, I mean, they've both got to show in this MLS 2 team and just show what they can get. Let's just play a little bit of audio just now. I asked Vanni Sartini after the draft on why he went for Simon Becher as their first pick, and just what the general plans are for the draft picks. Here's what he had to say about that. So, just spoken to Simon there, looking at his highlight reel and looking at what he's done at college level, at USL 2 level. He certainly seems to be a striker that knows the way to the back of the net. What was it about him that particularly interested you and made you want to make him your first pick today?
Well, first of all, I want to answer this. The fact is that the choice that we make, it's a team choice. It's just not us. We did a lot of work with our scouting team and with all the other coaches. So we had a pretty extensive background on what we could with all the players. And about Simon was the fact that he's a striker that is very intense. He attacked the space. Of course, he scored a lot of goals, but it's not just that. It's the fact that we saw something that we like in as a striker. He's very good at pressing. He does the simple things. So I actually look forward to see if this thing that we saw at the college level is going to be able to translate also at the professional level.
You used all your picks today as well, which hasn't necessarily been the case in some of the more recent ones with the club. With this new MLS 2 team on the horizon, are a number of these guys with a look to bring them in and have a look at them for the second team? Or are you just wanting to get the rights and maybe have them go elsewhere right now? Or is it too early to say?
Yeah, we don't know. We pick the guys because we think that they can be good players, maybe good players in perspective, and having them in preseason and watching them can be the possibility to understand if they're going to be part of our first team, part of our second team, maybe different designs. So the fact that we made all the picks is that we have this opportunity, and so we wanted to lock as many good players that we could have possibly locked.
So Vanni Sartini there saying, as far as he's concerned, he wants to look at them all in pre-season training, see what they've got. Who knows who might make the MLS roster, who might make the MLS Next Pro roster, who might not even make it altogether. But they're all going to be coming up, taking part in pre-season training. Now, Becher looks a bright prospect, as Steve talked about there. We've been there before, though, with various draft picks over the years. But looking at Becher's stats, he scored 21 goals and got 13 assists in his 3 seasons at St. Louis from 2019 to 21. Prior to playing there, he had a freshman season at Holy Cross University, and he led the team there with 7 goals and 3 assists. Last year was his final collegiate season, and he finished tied for first in NCAA goal contributions with 14 goals and 10 assists. He was named to the first team in All-American by the United Soccer Coaches. He was the Offensive Player of the Year in the Atlantic 10 Conference. Top Drawer Soccer had him in the first team Best 11, and he was also a semi-finalist in the Herman Trophy. So he's a guy that throughout his career at youth level, college level, USL 2 level, he knows how to get goals. He's scored a lot of goals. During the most recent season, he had a goal or an assist in 11 straight games, and he had a 5-game winning goals to help St. Louis win the conference championship. At USL 2 level, he scored 7 goals and 10 appearances for Reading United in 2019. The 2020 season was obviously not played with COVID. In 2021, he captained Ocean City Nor'easters. He was named to the Eastern Conference Team of the Year, and he scored 12 goals in 14 matches. 6 of them were game-winning goals, and in amongst that was a 10-minute hat-trick that he got by coming off the bench. So he's shown he can do it at these levels. Obviously, it's a step up, but it looks exciting. We've got a guy that knows how to score.
Yeah, and I think that, and I personally think that he will see a lot of time at that reserve level initially, and he'll probably be the main guy and be somebody that they could call up if they need him at the pro level. But a striker in their first couple of years as pro, whether it's at the MLS level, at the USL level, they need a couple of years to get used to playing up against grown men, defenders, basically. And that takes some time to figure out where they could find their open spots, how they need to work on their finishing. Finishing is something that I can't remember. I think it was Martin Rennie mentioned. I asked him like, what are three things that Caleb Clark? I remember asking him what three things that Caleb Clark need to work on as a young striker. He goes finishing. So he wouldn't even go to anything else. It was all three of them were finishing. He just needs to keep finishing. So that's something that young strikers need to do. And once they get that going, then they'll definitely. We talked about it before in previous shows that there have been a number of strikers that come from the college ranks where in their first year or two they don't do well, and then they all of a sudden they blossom once they get used to the league and everything. So hopefully it works with him as well. Brian White, same thing, kind of in that kind of way.
And like Brian White got a lot of experience by playing USL for Red Bulls 2, Red Bulls 3. And the thing is, Zach, with Becher, he's a guy that I quite like this, and I know a lot of teams, because this is what they look for in North American college soccer. They want their athletic and quick players. That isn't Becher. He's actually, it says about him, he's not the most athletic striker. And I actually quite like that, because I think we've taken a punt on a lot of athletic guys in the past, speedy little guys, and it just hasn't quite worked out. He is a guy that looks like he's going to thrive in a two-striker system, so playing off someone. So, I mean, if he can get some chemistry going, him and Egbo, say, in the MLS 2 Reserve League, that could be both good for both of those guys, because then they could go in and partner White, Cavallini, whatever. It also raises a question, though, what's maybe going to happen with Theo Bayer. Now, obviously, he's coming back to, as far as we know, to Whitecaps pre-season training, but after the experience that he's had over in Scandinavia last year, you have to imagine he's going to be quite keen to get back over there.
Yeah, I would think Theo would want to kind of continue to expand his horizons in Europe, as he's, I think, had some really positive experience already in Norway. Having said that, I'm a little surprised at them taking such attacking players. It does seem like, as you read about these guys, that and the Becher, am I saying right? Becher?
I'm going with Becher.
So Becher,
you can bet your bottom dollar.
Exactly. When you read about Becher and you read about these other attacking players, they all feel like there's a bit of this, diamond in the rough, like potentiality to them. And yeah,
which we have seen before with other guys.
Exactly.
I've been very high on a few of our draft picks over the years, and where are they now?
Exactly. But it now that they have this team close by again, it's probably not a bad idea to bring in some of these kind of guys like this.
I think
it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting how they perform in this reserve league.
Yeah.
The thing is with draft picks in most leagues, it's considered a lottery.
Oh,
pick.
yeah, so picking a poke a bit.
And considering soccer, the majority of top talent is actually in like through the academies and stuff like that. And MLS SuperDraft, that's more. The odds are even bigger than a normal lottery pick. So yeah, so I like you don't expect anybody to make it, but if somebody does, I think it's a bonus.
Let's hear a little bit from the man himself now. The Whitecaps first round draft pick, Simon Becher, spoke to media after the draft on Tuesday. I got to ask him a few questions. Here's what he had to say. When did you first get an indication that Vancouver might be interested in you? How did they talk to you in the build-up to this? How did those talks go?
Yeah, I think, a lot of teams, it happens differently for. Some teams will interview you a lot, and, obviously they're scouting a lot of players. I didn't really hear much from Vancouver until I got my name called, so it was a big surprise to me. And I think a lot of teams sometimes like to keep their cards close to their chest. If they have a pick that they really like, they don't really want to show a ton of maybe interest in case someone jumps up in front of them. So a bit of a surprise, but a pleasant one at that, for sure.
Looking at your goal scoring record at college level, at USL 2 as well, you're certainly a player that seems to know the back of the net. What, for folk that haven't seen you play, what can fans expect from you as a player? What do you hope to bring to this team?
Hopefully, of course, as a forward, I hope to bring goals. And if not off of me, off of my teammates, whether it be creating or scoring them. And then just an honest, hardworking player. I think I pride myself in, liking to do the dirty work, liking to work hard. I don't see myself as a bit of a luxury forward. I, kind of like to do it all. So, yeah, I think scoring and working hard and, wanting to win and hopefully bringing that to the club.
Like looking at how you've played the last couple of seasons in USL 2 with Ocean City, how did you find the transition from college to that level, and what do you feel you need to do now to take the step at this next level, because it's obviously going to be much different competition?
I think the transition from USL 2 to college is, I think they're very similar. A lot of college guys use that as I did to get ready for the college season. I think it really aided in my college season to come in match fit and hit the ground running. So, I felt those were pretty comparable levels. And then making the jump to MLS is obviously, it's much different than college soccer. So again, I think the guys in the locker room will help me. Guys who have been through it a lot, just kind of maybe show me the ropes. And then, the one thing, like I mentioned before, is just working hard and just being gritty and just showing the team I'm willing to work. I'm willing to, sacrifice to be a part of the team. And then hopefully my game continues to translate into the speed of play and I can help make a difference.
And just your own personal journey to this level. I know you came through Oakwood in USSDA and you're at Holy Cross before St. Louis as well. When did you know that you had what it took to be a professional footballer? And when did that kind of fire get lit under you that you wanted this to be your career? Yeah.
After... it's obviously a lot of players' dreams to be a professional. So it's been one since I've been a small kid, since I started playing and I fell in love with the game. But after my first season at Oakwood, I really had my first season at Holy Cross, I had a really good year there. And I had conversations and just hard ones, honestly. I needed to go somewhere to challenge myself if I wanted to be a serious professional player and have that opportunity. So I felt that, moving out of there and into a place like St. Louis, that would help me grow, that would challenge me to, become the best player I can and continue to improve my game. I think, that was the point where I was like, I can really do this if I obviously continue to put the work in and get somewhere that's going to continue to help me grow and challenge me to be a better player. And hopefully, moving from St. Louis to Vancouver, it does the same thing. I think, Vancouver will be a great spot for me to continue to grow and grow into the league as a player.
So Simon Becher there. Interesting, his girlfriend's from Toronto, so he's been up in Canada. He's used to shoveling snow, he said, so just as well with the winters that we're starting to have by the looks of it. So at least there's a Canadian connection. He knows about Canada and his girlfriend at least is going to settle. So that is a good thing. Let's just quickly look over the others. We won't spend too much time on these guys because who really knows? So Luis Felipe Fernandez Salvador. Now he sounds like he would be a good footballer. I mean, that's a name that there's only one Luis Felipe Fernandez Salvador. One Luis Felipe Fernandez Salvador.
I'm assuming he'll probably go by Luis Felipe, right? He won't. They'll cut out the last part of his name. I think usually that's what occurs.
Well,
right?
We know Felipe's work out here.
Yeah.
So I mean, when would that not work out? But he sounds like he could be another good prospect. He played a key role in helping Clemson University win the 2021 NCAA National Championships. He earned a spot on the College Cup All-Tournament team as well. He's a midfielder. He scored 8 goals, got 5 assists in 23 appearances and 16 starts in his senior season. Overall finished his collegiate career with 11 goals, 14 assists and 69 appearances, 51 of those starts. He originally hails from Ecuador, but he did play, as you mentioned, Steve, his youth soccer with Shattuck St Mary's, who's a team that whenever it was the USSDA playoffs, we always saw them. Whitecaps have played them a few times. So it's a really top independent academy there. One of the other guys, Aguilar, central midfielder, but he has signed with Sacramento Republic, so the Caps are holding his MLS rights. So already he's away developing at USL level. If he turns out to be a great player, they've got his rights.
Yeah, and good thing is that they knew this time that he had signed with somebody, unlike a previous time.
Yes, no surprises there. Now, the other two guys who were taken in the third round, now third round picks, you can usually just either just forget about and a lot of teams pass. These two guys are very intriguing, and that's why it's good that we've got this MLS 2 team now to have a look at them. So Colom, he's 21. He played 2 seasons of soccer at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. 2021 season, he led all of the NCAA during the regular season with 15 goals, and he's averaged 1 goal a game. He also got 5 assists. Now, that's pretty impressive at college level. He's a native of Clermont in France, and he also played 3 seasons on the second team of French club Clermont Foot 63. Don't think they're any relation to Club Foot Montreal, but
I knew you were going to say
that. You could say. I had to. But he made 30 appearances with them and scored 9 goals. So that's a good level in France as well. And then there's this Brazilian guy, Diaz. 23, so a bit older. But he led Marshall University to their first NCAA National Championship title in 2020. He tallied 6 goals and 7 assists in 14 starts and 17 appearances that season. Got a slew of accolades as well. He was a semi-finalist for the Mac Herman Trophy. Overall, 14 goals, 15 assists in 54 appearances for Marshall. So these are guys I'm interested to see what they can do, as I said. I mean, who knows? It's a bit of a pig in a poke. We'll see how it turns out.
The thing is that the one thing I want to say, but the people might not know, I know that's a good accolade to being a semi-finalist for the Herman Trophy, but that's kind of like being nominated for Coach of the Year in MLS. If you're coaching, you get nominated. But it's a very good thing because the other accolades are definitely big, like the Conference USA Player of the Year and Offensive MVP. The second 2 players are highly attacking players.
Yeah.
And so that should be exciting at that reserve level.
And we've got guys that's won national championships as well. And just going back to Becher as well, that St. Louis program, I think 5 or 6 guys selected in the first round from that one team, which the new MLS St. Louis team must be like, why are we not in this year? There's all this local talent that's coming out. And the general feeling is they're now going to use St. Louis University to channel their academy guys into that because it's such a good program. And just looking around the facilities, it's a proper grass pitch. It looks a great atmosphere. They pack the fans in, and yeah.
It might not translate into anything, but it is encouraging to see, I guess, at least 2 of these players come in as, having won something, not the individual accolades, the actual has been a part of a championship winning team. Like, hopefully that mentality is transferred to whether it's the second team or the first team. Because I think, hopefully that'll be an intangible that we see bear some fruit.
And in Becher, we've got another guy that's captained a team, which is another thing that we seem to look for a lot.
Who's that Whitecaps striker? Tom, the big guy, Tommy
Heineman?
No. Maybe the big guy.
Wolfman?
Wolfman. That's it.
Yeah, it's Tommy Heineman.
I think, wasn't he from the St. Louis area too? Maybe not the university, but I thought he was from the...
It's a very storied program.
Yeah,
it's like they've won a lot of championships.
Either he was from St. Louis or he's from that university. I can't remember what it was.
But these guys, as we've talked about, primarily I would fully expect to see them get a look on this MLS 2, MLS Next Pro. I'm trying to get used to saying it. I'd rather just call it MLS 2, but I'm trying to go with the proper name. It is a bit of a mouthful. But it's exciting because that is one of the two new Whitecaps teams that we've got to watch in 2022. So I asked Axel on Tuesday just what's happening with that. Does he know when the schedule's going to be coming out, what the games are going to look like? Is it more going to be tailored for fans going to watch, etc., etc.? Here's what he had to say about that. My other question was just about the MLS Next Pro side. Can you share any more information on it as to maybe when the season may be starting, where you're looking to play, how closely integrated with the first team you look for this team to be?
The only thing I can answer right now is the third part of it. I think everything else will come soon, but we are also there coordinating with MLS and the new office that is coordinating the MLS Next Pro. But we see both teams very closely connected, and we want to have this team very close by to the first team, because we want, and we always said, we want to see that team as the top of the pyramid of our development platform, and we want to be a club that gives chances to players and has a pathway for players to the first team. So for that reason, if you have made the last step to this last team of our academy, then you should also see already the first team, although you are not there, and it has to have a close connection. That the transition is very easy. For example, if Vanni has a training and he's missing a player on a certain position, or with international duties also coming up soon, we need a few more bodies. Those players are ready and know exactly what the demands are in this first team.
Just to clarify though, is this a team that you would be expecting supporters to be able to come and watch the games, or is it more games that's going to be like midweek and during the day and stuff like that?
No. Also the schedule will be as much connected to the first team schedule as possible. Of course, everything is challenging. If you're the last post in this league in North West, so there's a lot of travel coming up also for that team, and they are not only playing MLS teams. So it's not possible that they always play this game schedule like us, but as much as possible, also the schedule should be aligned and connected to our schedule. So there's also the idea if we play on the road, another team that also has an MLS Next Pro team, that we travel together. On what I think it's a very good idea and a very good possibility for those players to do a first step into the professional team and to see how things work without being really exactly there, but to be more ready to play in MLS at some point.
Axel Schuster there, just chatting a little bit about the MLS 2 team. So a lot still up in the air about where they're going to be playing and stuff like that, but it does make sense, guys, if they do have, it might not necessarily be double headers, but if they're on a trip to Portland, the first team plays one day, the other team plays the next day, so that maybe some of the guys that didn't get a look can do this. You know, a proper MLS 2 team. Why have we never thought of that before? But we'll see how that plays out. I am genuinely looking forward, though, to the MLS Next Pro, also the under-19s in League One BC. Just the more football to watch, just put it straight in my veins. But that is it for our Whitecaps chat for this episode. For the rest of the show, we're going to be turning our attention to women's soccer. And we're going to be looking at the national team, club football in Canada from a women's perspective. And we're going to be chatting to Emma Humphries as well, Director of Women's Football at the Whitecaps. And we will be back with all of that after this.
Hi, I'm Vanni Sartini, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
That's
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's our Artist of the Month for January here at AFTN. From Edinburgh, Scotland, the seminal punk band The Exploited, with their third single, which was released in 1981, and that was Dead Cities. Which, if you're like my wife, when I was playing this earlier, putting this together, she's like, what is he singing? I was like, Dead Cities. So, as I did warn on last week's show, when it's our Artist of the Month, maybe you might want to turn the volume down just a little bit. But anyway, it is time now for our final year in review segment on the show. We've looked at the Whitecaps, we've looked at the CPL, we've looked at the men's national team. Now it's going to be a Canadian women's football year in review, and we're kicking it off in this part with the only way that we can kick it off. The gold medal win in Tokyo, a moment that will long live in the memories of all football fans in Canada. It feels so long ago already, Steve, but just when you think back to the summer, that gold medal win, it still brings out goosebumps on me. I mean, how do you look back at that now, all these months later?
It's odd too, because if you look back on it, we weren't even sure if the Olympics were still going to happen at that time. There was although the organizer said it's definitely going to happen, you still never knew, right? And the fact that this tournament should have been a year before, like how much does that affect everything as well? So a lot of weird things going into this tournament, and it was like we talked about in the men's thing, how they built up through the year. This was a building through the years of getting to this point. Like this has been multiple years. Like you go all the way back to the World Cup in Germany and how low they were at that point, and to that long trek back to the top. Obviously, so many players that were on this team and like on that team and on the teams that following weren't on this particular team. And so there's a lot of players that were involved in building this to the gold medal.
What about yourself, Zach? Looking back on it now, 6-7 months ago, it is still, when you think back to that penalty shootout, just such a magical moment in women's football.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it wasn't by no means anticlimactic, but for me, it's essentially the beating the Americans in the semifinals was, I almost felt like going into the final. Well, one, you felt like, okay, they have achieved their objective because they've changed the color of the medal. But I also almost felt like, not it was a given, but you just felt like they're going to win this. Like they've beaten the Americans in this in the semifinal.
They could have got complacent. But they could also have been like a hangover from that as well, because I mean, I don't think these women were off that mindset. No. But sometimes it's easy to slip into, well, we've done the hard job now.
No, to me, it was like they exercised the ghosts of 2012 in Great Britain, where they should have beaten the States in the semifinals, and that it just felt to me like, they were going to go on and win it. I think it's the greatest thing to happen in Canadian football.
Yeah, no, I said women's soccer, but really in Canadian football,
it's the greatest thing in Canadian football that ever happened, which is amazing.
Until we lift the World Cup in 2026.
That's true. But it is a little bit awkward because, not awkward, but when you can't help but analyze and reflect on how they won it, right? Like it wasn't. The football itself was flowing, but like the attack especially in the knockout stages, the attack wasn't like clicking, right? Like they did
it was a defence first win, if we're being honest. And like Bev Priestman talked about that afterwards, that she knew she had to be solid defensively to do this.
But they had good attacking as well. It was like their finishing was just off, or they didn't quite create enough chances to, because it was weird, right? Like they didn't score a goal from open play in the knockout stages, right? And yet they still won. They scored a couple penalties, and then they won 2 penalty shootouts.
As you always point out to me, those Zach, penalties still count as goals.
And having said that, for me, none of that takes away from the fact that it is the greatest thing that's ever happened in Canadian football.
It felt like a very Italian run to me, like a typical Italian run that the men have seen in the past, where it's just like you do what you have to do to get over the line, even if it means going to penalties and winning it there.
That's more like that's not quite this era of Italian football.
No, I'm talking about talking about the old school.
Old school. I know exactly what Steve's meaning with that. I mean, as you touched on there, Zach, the whole thing with this was to change the colour of the medal. That's what Bev Priestman preached going into this. They'd had bronzes. They wanted at least silver. They got even better. If we look at the group stage, Canada were drawn in Group E beside Team GB, Chile, and the hosts, Japan. So in the group stage, they only got 1 win and 2 draws. They opened with a good 1-1 draw with the host, Japan. Sinclair opened the scoring 6 minutes in, but Japan tied it up with 6 minutes to go. And you wondered how important that was going to be. Was Japan the favourites to win the group with the home field advantage and everything like that?
For sure. And you're forgetting as well that that could have easily been a loss, because Stephanie LaBelle saved the penalty in that game. And I think had to be substituted off as soon as she saved the penalty, because she was injured or something like that. So that was a huge game. It's tough going against the host, because you don't know if you're going to get a nervous host or you're going to get a pumped up host. Or whatever.
I think it helped that there was no fans, because that could have been a whole different atmosphere.
Yeah, definitely. And so I think that those kind of things did play a factor in that first game.
I think you're right, Michael. It was a measuring stick, because Japan has been such quality in the women's game for the last number of years. But the thing I remember about that game and the other draw in the group stage was that even though they drew, I felt like they could have or maybe even should have won.
Yeah.
Well, it
was late goals that they gave up, because like the next game, it was a 2-1 win over Chile, 2 Janine Becky goals, and then it was a 1-1 draw with Team GB in the final group game. Team GB then won the group because of that, but it was another late equaliser they gave up, an own goal this time with 5 minutes to go. So they were giving up late goals. Even in that Chile game, they were 2-0 up and they let Chile get a goal back. So
that game should have been. I remember watching that game, the Chile game. Like they should have hammered them.
Yeah, they should have been out of sight in that. So I mean, after that, finishing second in the group, and then you see some other surprises like America finished second in their group. How were you feeling about how it was going and the path ahead? Were you confident? I was pretty sure they'd get to the semi-finals, but then after that, I really wasn't sure.
Yeah, it was going to be like I wasn't as confident because of those goals they gave up and some of the results. I really thought they had when they drew Great Britain, Team GB or whatever. That was the one where I was like, oh, that was their chance to finish the top of the group and maybe have a easier run through the thing, but. It ended up not being the case, and obviously he was wrong in that case. But yeah,
I know, and like who knows how things would have played out if they'd actually won the group as well. It's that interesting things. You look back and you go, "Oh, what if that had happened and they hadn't done this?" And because you thought they had the toughest thing, because they had Brazil in the quarters and then America in the semis, and if you'd written that on paper, you'd be like, "Oh, that's the toughest thing they could have got."
Well, they beat Brazil in the past, so I wasn't that over but it was the US matchup that I saw that was going to be difficult to see to get.
I mean, the Brazil game, I mean, let's be honest, it was a nervy affair. It wasn't a quality game at all. Both teams, especially, it was 0-0 after extra time, and both teams clearly in extra time did not want to lose. No. If it had gone straight to penalties, they'd have been very happy with that. 4-3 win on penalties got them through to that US game, It was a 1-0 win in the end over the Yanks. Jesse Fleming, nerves of steel, dispatching that 75th minute penalty. And it's like ghosts exercised, as you say, Zach, monkeys off back. But it was just such a magical moment. And from covering this team from 2012 onwards, the World Cups, the Olympics, like Steve and me went and spoke to a number of the players here on a couple of occasions. It was just great to see these players and the young ones that had come through. We've seen them come through with the Whitecaps. We've seen some of the players were playing with TSS in the WPSL and stuff. And it's just fantastic seeing this group of players finally get that win over the US, and deservedly so as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so happy for the squad, and so happy for the people, the players that have been there for a long time, and for those new young players. One thing I want to say about Jesse Fleming, which was kind of interesting for me, is that I really was kind of torn in one sense. Like, I think it was healthy, but it was painful. And that is the whole penalty taking thing. Because, like, for me, I wanted Christine Sinclair to take as many penalties as possible. Like, I still wanted to hit 200 before she retires or whatever,
She's never retiring. She's 38. She's got another 10 years in her.
Yeah, that's probably that. Everyone would be okay with that. But she hasn't been great at penalties, right?
Yeah.
And so she stopped taking them, and then I think Becky was taking them, and Becky had missed the number.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, come on. Like, we need to be scoring these. And so then see Jesse Fleming step in and just be calm, cool, and collected, and decisive, and just quality from the spot in massive moments.
Yeah, because that's the thing as well. If she had missed that, what that would have done to her mentally.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't even bear thinking about.
And the thing
in one sense, I was sad that Sinclair wasn't the one to do it. But in another sense, I was happy that someone did step up and got the job done and became that kind of go-to penalty taker.
And the thing is, in that game, honestly, even though normally I'm very nervous, it didn't. There was very little coming from the U.S. It's like whether they were awful or kind of put them in the position to be awful, whatever the case is there was no moment in that game after that goal was scored where you felt the U.S. was coming back at all.
It was a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, Steve. But they were a very, very poor team. And again, it felt really good to see that as a Canadian.
Yes. Just because of their arrogance, and even media arrogance before it, of like, there's no one can.
Did they lose the bronze medal match too?
No, they won that.
They won the bronze. Yeah, okay, yeah.
The thing that I enjoy about watching after those kind of games is just going on YouTube and watching the experts, the U.S. experts, just talk about the team and everything after a loss like that.
Any American national team loss, male or female, the meltdown with the experts and the media and the fan, it's wonderful.
I think the meltdown's more with the men's because they haven't done anything. They do give the women a little bit of leeway here and there, but it's still fun to watch.
Yeah, and let's be honest. Everyone wants to knock off the top dog in every sport and every country around the world. Whoever's the top team or the top country, everyone's gunning for them. Everyone wants to see them lose. So it's set up an Olympic final. Canada versus Sweden. I don't think there's many people would have maybe even pegged either of those teams to be in the final. Maybe Sweden, but I don't think that was probably what folk were expecting. Canada took the lead in this one, but then... Oh, no, they didn't. Sweden took the lead in this one, 34th minute, but again, Jesse on the spot, levelling things in the 68th minute. Then no further goals through the 90, through extra time. Again, it was quite nervy with neither team really fully committing by that point. After it was tied up at 1-1, I was like, this is going to penalties, because I didn't watch it live. I just fast forwarded through because I knew it was going to penalties. It just felt inevitable.
Yeah, it did. It did totally feel inevitable. And it was not a fun penalty shootout to watch.
No.
I remember.
Oh, but
being
it
up-
was-
I forget
it
what
wasn't-
time it was by that
Looking
time. but
back
it was
now,
a
it's
tough time.
it's exciting. But yeah,
it wasn't fun, but it was definitely a roller coaster because it kept going back and forth of who was in charge and everything like that.
you know, well, Sweden had missed theirs. They went first and missed. Then Canada scored and went 1-0 up. Then Sweden scored their next two while Canada missed their next two. So then Canada are 2-1 down after the first three kicks. And then Stephanie LeBay just took over. Sweden didn't score any of their next three. Steph saved two of them. And then it all came down to Julia Grosso converting that penalty. A young girl that we've seen come through the Whitecaps, that we've seen, as I said, playing for TSS. Local girl. Wow. Just, I say this in all penalty shootouts for big things. I've said this to my wife before. I don't know if I'm in that situation. What makes your legs even walk up to the spot? I don't know. I think I would just freeze. I don't know I'd be able to kick it 12 yards. And she just finished that with such aplomb and coolness and calmness.
I know. The thing that saved her was the power or pace that she put on it, because it wasn't a great penalty. The keeper got a hand to it, but it was so strong that it ended up in the roof of the net off of the keeper's hand.
Yeah. And yeah, it basically just deflected off, like it basically went through the hand and went upwards. But it's still, Michael is a little right there that she did come up very calm. There was no sense of nerves there, and she put it where she wanted to put it and put it with pace. Yeah, and that's the important thing. Like if you don't put it, if you just guide it in there, it's going to be saved at this point. Because
and hitting it with force is risky as well, because you can blast it over.
The Swedish penalty kick just before that happened, they just she skied it. I think it was one of their best players, like in their history or whatever, during overtime or whatever.
As much as I think it's debatable that it wasn't the greatest penalty taken, it doesn't matter. She got the
I'm not saying it was a great penalty, but I just feel she was cool, calm, and collected to take it.
Oh yes, yeah.
She just wanted to get force in it and get it in, and she did that. I mean, as Steve said, absolute roller coaster. These are the kind of games and situations that make or break players, and in Julia Grosso's case, it set her off now in a great career that she's hopefully going to have over in Europe and stuff.
And the celebration was fantastic afterwards too.
I mean, that brought tears to your eyes. Seeing Karina LeBlanc in tears and really emotional.
There were tears in my eyes. Were there tears in both your eyes?
Yeah. Genuine. How could you not? How could you watch that? You'd have to just be made of steel not to fill up during such an emotional moment, I think. Let's hear a little bit of audio now from Bev Priestman. This is from a call that she did with media in August once she came back. Haven't featured it on the show before. This is her just talking about changing the colour of the medal, the desire of this team to do that, and what they achieved in Tokyo.
There's lots of different compartments, and obviously I've had the chance to now reflect. I think the first thing is setting out the vision. I think that drives everything, and changing the colour of the medal. They truly were going after that and what that meant. But I think I would use some words around hunger. I talk about we are back-to-back bronze, but some of the analogies I've used around, if you keep reading over the last chapter, you won't write the next chapter. And just like hunger, desire, fresh faces, the depth in the group and trust in the depth in the group. I knew coming into this tournament, I want to be the best coach at this tournament at utilising depth and using the 5 subs, which was unique to this particular tournament. So there was many different factors, but I think actions speak louder than words in the belief and the trust. And, how I tried to operate with the group, some of the conversations we had, even down to what happens on a training pitch. I felt the time was right. And even as a coach, I think when we got through that Brazil game, I knew then, right, okay, we're going all the way. And I think the players probably felt that and knew that, but there's been various moments in my short tenure, the US game the first time, the England game. There's moments where you stand on the sideline and players feel it on the pitch, where you go, yeah, we can absolutely do this. And then I think using numbers to tell stories always backs it up. So I think we've gone now 11 games unbeaten. Throughout the tournament, I'm trying to fill them with confidence that, these numbers don't lie and this is what winning teams need to do. So I think a blend of a lot of things, and I can't put my finger on it, but I think they could look each other, they could look me in the eye, and they knew that we have it in us. We've just got to turn up and be brave. And if we do that, we can beat anyone on our day. And that was sort of the message.
So Bev Priestman there just chatting about that historic moment in Canadian soccer. Gold medal winners, and Canada now just have to build on that. They're a team now that's going to have a target on their back. Folks going to want to knock them off at the next World Cup next year down in Australia and New Zealand. Now, FIFA are having their end of year best of awards on January 17th, and there's some Canadian interest in the nominees in some categories, but a very notable absence in the final selections was Bev Priestman as Women's Coach of the Year. Now, she was in the original 5-women shortlist, or 5-person shortlist, I should say, but didn't make the top 3 after it was whittled down. The top 3 being Louis Cortez from FC Barcelona. Now, he did win a treble with FC Barcelona, so at club level, fantastic achievement. Emma Hayes at Chelsea, and Sarina Wiegman, who managed the Dutch and the English national teams. And somehow she gets nominated instead of the gold medal winner.
It's pretty impressive, though. She lost to probably competitions with 2 national teams. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it takes some going.
Yeah.
It's
incredible.
Unbelievable. It's asinine. I cannot believe. When I saw that, I saw Herdman's tweet about it. I was like, wait, what?
Oh, the outrage from the women's players, and rightly so, and like the media, and like I know it's easy to look at this from a Canadian perspective, but this woman has just won the gold medal. Now you can argue what's the most important, the Olympic gold or World Cup winners. They're two major championships that women can win. Bev Priestman's won one of them, and she doesn't even make the top 3 nominees.
Yeah.
I don't get that at all. No. I don't know how is this just how the Olympics are maybe looked at by people elsewhere in the world, that to them it wasn't the World Cup, it was only the Olympics.
I always thought that the for the men's soccer that the Olympics weren't that important, but I always thought that for the women's it was.
I thought it is more important for the women's. It is an easier tournament to win with the less amount of teams and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but still. It's crazy.
It's still a major achievement.
Yeah.
And it's the first time Canada has done it.
Yeah.
I won't go on a big rant, but I think everybody listening to this will be like, why is Bev Priestman not nominated? Certainly something I'd love to speak to her about. Elsewhere in the awards, Stephanie Labbe is up for Female Goalkeeper of the Year. I think, I would have thought she was a shoo-in because of her performance in that final with the saves. But who knows if Priestman's not even making the top 3 nominees.
Well, there might be somebody out there that had a great club season too, so we don't know that. Yeah. So that's the thing you have to look at too.
Christine Sinclair was in the long list for Female Player of the Year, but then Marta's always in that and various things like that. She didn't make the final 3, and there was one Canadian who's in the shortlist for the Women's World 11, and that is the defender Kadisha Buchanan. So, I mean, overall, it's been a great year for the national team. So I guess to kind of finish this bit off, you can say what's next, and obviously it's the World Cup. They do have a target on their back, and the expectation now, Steve, is they've got to go and perform at the World Cup.
Yeah, I think that's obviously the biggest, the next big step. Obviously, it's a little bit of a, I don't know when they're going to hold it. Like I know it's scheduled
June and July next year is the current schedule.
2023, right?
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. So I knew they're going to hold it around that time, but like, is it going to be held at that time? Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe it's something that gets delayed as well.
I think as long as Novak Djokovic isn't taking part, it should all go quite smoothly.
but yeah, that's the biggest thing, because there have been tournaments even in like other sports that have been international tournaments that have been canceled recently. So it's just a matter of seeing it. By then, hopefully everything gets back to normal. But we said that last year too.
Yeah.
So
I'd love to go down for it, because I've always wanted to go to Australia and New Zealand, and this is just a great chance. And obviously, I've been watching the A-League and seeing all these venues, and there's some amazing stadiums.
I have a place to stay in New Zealand, and it's going to be cooler. It's not going to be that warm as well, because it's in the winter. Yeah, it's in their winter.
That was that's why I was like, oh, it's ideal. I still might, but I don't know. We'll see how the lay of the land is. But I mean, that's the thing, Zach. It's like they've got to now go and follow this up, I feel, with a strong showing at the World Cup.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's
you're looking at least quarterfinals, maybe better.
Oh, yeah, and that's been the kind of the thing that's been disappointing about these bronze medals, is that they haven't been followed up with quality performances at World Cups, including one that was hosted, that Canada hosted. So
I know that's the biggest disappointment, because you just we're so sure they'd get to at least the semis.
And that game at BC Place against England, it was tragic.
Yeah,
they lost that game. But so you hope they can move forward. And I think if the talent kind of keeps coming through, and if Priestman can continue to coach them in such a way as to get the best out of them, I mean, things are. I mean, obviously, the time is ticking for Sinclair, as much as we were joking about it before.
Yeah,
but
she's probably got the next World Cup in her, and then I think that probably will be it.
Yeah, at the most, I would think. Like that's.
I can't see her. I mean, she might just be a bit part player, but she's going to want to go.
You think?
I think she would have hung her. Like, I think she would have quit after the Olympics.
Yeah, if she was
at international level.
Okay,
I feel like if she didn't have any interest in the next World Cup, it would have been ideal to retire right after going out on a high note and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't see her or Atiba ever hanging their boots up.
I really hope she gets to the 200 though.
Yeah,
I can't see that, I have to say, but I don't know. We'll see. She's still a long way off that. And she hasn't been scoring as frequently. I think she only scored 2 goals last year.
What is she at, though? Isn't she at like 189 or something?
I want to say 187, but it could be 189. That's still a lot to go when you've only scored 2 goals in the last year. That was from 12 games, I believe.
Just let her take the penalties and friendlies.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, to bring on the next crop of talent, obviously, we need to develop a stronger domestic game in the country. We need professional teams in Canada. We need a professional league in Canada. We need more opportunities for these girls to play, and for the girls coming through college to come out to have these opportunities to play. And we're going to have some of that, at least in BC. League One BC is starting. We've got the WPSL. We'll touch on both those things shortly. But this is what we need to do. We need to have these opportunities to come. And that is kind of what we're going to be focusing on over the next 2 parts. One of the women that is going to have a big responsibility in developing the next crop of young talent in BC is Whitecaps Director of Women's Football Development, Emma Humphries. And I got a chance to sit down with her a couple of weeks ago just to chat about all things Whitecaps and the domestic game here. And we will be back chatting to her after this.
Hi, I'm Maxime Crépeau from the Vancouver Whitecaps, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
We all
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, we've gone all Canadian on you. We've even gone all Vancouver, because it's Vancouver band You Say Party, with the first single taken from their 2005 debut album Hit the Floor. That was The Gap Between the Rich and the Poor. The band were originally called You Say Party, We Say Die. They're now known as You Say Party, dropping the latter part of the name after the tragic death of drummer Devin Clifford on stage at the Rickshaw Theatre here in Vancouver back in 2010. Fantastic local band. And I thought for the last two parts of this show, I would play some female-fronted Canadian music for you guys. But that was The Gap, and there's several gaps in women's soccer, between the top national teams and the upcoming countries, between countries that have really strong domestic leagues and countries that don't. And sadly, Canada falls into that latter category, because while the rest of the world have kind of moved on, NWSL's set up and thriving in the US, you've got the leagues over in England and Scotland, over in Europe, that are just going from strength to strength. Canada still lags behind. No professional league here yet. No professional teams currently here in Canada. Hopefully that is something that will change. And that is something we're going to kind of focus on over the next two parts of the show today. First up, we're going to bring you this episode's feature interview. And it's with the woman tasked with spearheading the Whitecaps as they try to get back into the club scene on a serious level. Emma Humphries was named the Director of Women's Football Development at the Whitecaps back in September last year. Returning to the Whitecaps, where she made her name between 2014 and 2018 as Girls Director and Head Coach of the Whitecaps Rex programme back then. Emma and her wife Bev Priestman then headed off to England and did a lot of good work over there before returning to Canada in September last year. And Emma is spearheaded with taking the women's programme at the Whitecaps to the next level, both on a playing side and on a coaching side as well. And also she's tasked with launching the new League One BC women's team that the Whitecaps will have starting in May this year. So some very exciting developments. Was looking forward to chatting to Emma for quite a while. Got a chance to sit down with her a few weeks ago now. So we're going to bring you that interview just now. So go put the kettle on, make your favourite hot beverage of choice, sit back and enjoy our chat with Whitecaps Director of Women's Football Development, Emma Humphries. So delighted now to say that we're joined by Emma Humphries, Director of Women's Football Development at the Whitecaps at the moment. A woman that's got a long history with the Whitecaps, and she's back to take charge of the women's programme. Thank you for joining us today, Emma.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
So Emma, it's a busy time for you at the moment. I know you've been going around all the academies in Canada and everything just now. For people that's unaware of your role and what you do, what is your role with the Whitecaps at the moment?
So I think my role with the Whitecaps specifically is largely around aligning all of our rec centres across the country. So we now run in a rec centre in Alberta, in Calgary and in Edmonton. We just set them up this past year. And we also have rec centres throughout Western Canada as well. So when I was in last time, for almost a 5-year period, I was the head coach of our rec centre here in Vancouver. Now I'm kind of overseeing and making sure I'm aligning curriculum, making sure messaging is consistent across the country and consistent across centres that aren't super rec centres as well, to make sure that we're giving everyone a chance across Canada, not just those kind of living in some of our bigger centres.
And it's not just from a player's point of view that you're doing this as well, because it's coaches as well, and bringing through the next level of coaches in the game. Is that something that you're really enjoying doing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the club is super committed to having more female coaches as well, working within our network. We've just appointed 2 top female coaches as head coaches in Alberta. As I said, we're sort of making our way across the country. And it's certainly not to say that men don't have a place working in women's football. They absolutely do. But at the same time, we absolutely need to increase the amount of female coaches that are working at the highest level. So I see that as a key part of my role. It's in helping upskill all of our rec centre head coaches, provide opportunities again outside of the super centres, because we certainly don't. I come from a country that is smaller than some of our smaller centres, and we produce a country that can play at a World Cup. So I'm a big believer that we must be missing some talent in some of our supposedly smaller centres as well. So that being coaches, that being players, that being everyone that's associated within the pathway as well.
Yeah, Canada, I think until you get here, you don't really, it's a big country, but until you get here and you start travelling around it or dealing with people all over, you don't quite realise how big it is. And obviously I'm from Scotland, it's a small country, New Zealand's a small country. But we'll take a little backtrack initially through your career just now as well. So as you mentioned, you were girls director here at the Whitecaps and head coach of the girls programme of the Whitecaps from 2014 to 2018. In your time here, you brought through some top quality talent, and you just look at the recent Olympics and players that won the gold medal, you brought them through from an early age. Jordan Huitema, Julia Grosso, they were all in your programme. When you look back at that initial time, how do you look back at that time? And did you know that these players had what it took to go out and then perform at the top level?
I think the answer is no. It's not an exact science, player development. I think we always knew that both those 2 kids had high potential. But a lot of kids have high potential, and not a lot of kids. There's a group of kids at that kind of top level that you go, okay, you have potential to one day play for Canada. And I think you can see that fairly early, which are the kids that kind of have the core technical, tactical, as well as physical attributes that could mesh together. So yeah, I think we did see something in those 2 in particular. I think there could with time be a few more that sort of come out of that cycle. People sort of still forget that Jordan's 21 and Julia's only 22 as well. And in the modern game now, females are only really starting to break through into that team now at a much later age, which is a really good thing as well for the maturity of the game. But looking back, I think it was just like us investing in the future. It wasn't an easy time period either, because we were sort of trying to make change. John had inspired everyone with that first bronze medal when we first came in, and it was sort of our job coming in and leading the rec centres to then put that plan into action. And we got a lot wrong as well. We made many mistakes along the way as well, in trying to decipher what exactly is meant by each thing. But I think some of the core attributes and some of the things we were really strong on probably helped these 2 coming to. For example, it was the first time we'd ever put a program in that young. So to have, we did have Julia and Jordan from I think Jordan was 12, Julia was 13 years old. In the past, Girls Elite was sort of more that 16 to 18 age group. So certainly targeting best with best from a younger age would have absolutely helped those 2. And, John was big on if you're good enough, you're old enough. And although I think that threshold now is getting older, which is, like I said, a good thing, I think that philosophy of exposing kids at the right time and taking chances on kids was a really good thing too.
So when you left the programme in 2018, obviously yourself and Bev went over to England. At that time from your career, were you kind of just wondering what direction you wanted to go? And then how did the Liverpool opportunity come about?
Yeah, well, it was, on a personal level, like it was just an absolutely crazy time because our son was 2 months old.
Yeah.
And we sort of, I don't know if you remember, but we got really close to having a women's team in Vancouver, really close.
Yeah.
It didn't quite happen for whatever reasons that, make sense. However, for me, it was sort of like that felt like the next step. I wanted to get into the women's professional game, which is probably crazy, having a 2-month-old. It was sort of, I knew I always wanted to get back into the workforce quite quickly. So no, it wasn't random. Like when we sort of, it's not easy kind of having two people that work in high performance in football, but we did target England for that reason. We both felt at that point in our careers that we needed something different. Bev had been an assistant for a while with Canada in various roles, and also done U17, U20 for multiple cycles at that point. And, she sort of felt she was ready for a different challenge. And what that brought with her in England was an ability to just do one role as an assistant coach. And she got that opportunity. For me, it was, I wanted to get into the professional game. And where the crazy part comes is I had no leads. Like, I'm a Kiwi. Kiwis aren't known for football. We're known for rugby. And I kind of, just told myself I was going to do it. So I had Jack at home, our little, I think he was, at the startup, when I was kind of applying for jobs, he was about 4 months old. And I just sort of got to know everyone and in the community and spoke about some of the things we'd done in Canada, talked a little bit about some of my ideas that, we'd wanted to implement here. And then, eventually I was just sort of connected with the head coach at Liverpool. I had a couple of other opportunities that could have got me into the sort of top level youth space as well. But I really wanted to work with senior players. So, and just have that experience in the professional game. Got to meet Vicky Jepson, the head coach at the time. And we just hit it off well and it kind of worked from there.
It's such a big soccer city, obviously. And when I left Scotland in 2007, throughout the UK, the women's game was still pretty much a very basic level. It didn't get a lot of respect. It was the butt of a lot of jokes on some of the football comedy shows. I can't believe how far it's come in that country. And you've got BBC and BBC Scotland showing highlight shows, and Scotland's a little bit behind England, but we're getting more and more professional teams. To see the growth of the game in a country like that, what was it like to be a part of that? And has it given you a taste to then grow the game in places like here or even back in New Zealand?
Yeah, absolutely. Even in the time we were in England, which was only 2.5 years, the game just exploded while we were there. And it was quite exciting to be a part of. Like, I think when we left, we always felt that that the WSL had big potential. We felt like it would be the next place to take off. But even it would have been 3.5 years ago, the game was in a much different place to now. When I look at the league and the signings and all the best players, and not all the best, but a lot of the best players in Europe. Some Americans have gone to play in the league too now. A lot of Australians. It's probably the most players from different countries around the world in that league, and it's turned into a top league. It comes alongside investment. So
Yes.
Barclays put in a massive amount of money into the league. The clubs, it helps having big clubs that back a league for sure. And England has just really well established clubs to where women's football was sort of ready to take everything on. Now, that comes with its pros and cons, because I would say the established clubs are men's established clubs, and so I think it was ready to explode and ready to kind of move forward. I also think that the NWSL is in a great place too. On the pitch in terms of performances, I think America has a really unique culture around women's football, and they have women's football designed clubs, and so it's fascinating to see how the different leagues around the world are kind of exploding. And I was saying to Bev the other day, it's actually getting to a part now where you have so many professional leagues around the world that you're getting styles of play a bit more like the men's game. That the Spanish league is going to be this style now. That English teams play typically like this. And this is what attributes and players that they're looking for. The American league's looking for this, and so it's getting to that point where there's very definite different pockets that are going to make the game hit another level as well.
The growth, especially in England, investment was a big part of it. Their success at the 2015 World Cup here captured so many people's attention over there as well. It's weird because here, we've talked in Canada before, when the bronze was won in 2012, it's like, oh, this is going to be the start of the growth of the women's game. And then another bronze, oh, this is going to be the start, hosting the World Cup. Oh, it's going to really trigger things. Now a gold medal. And I asked Bev this a couple of months ago as well, and she said there are things in the work. Just because it's gone quiet publicly doesn't mean things aren't happening. But you're so entrenched in the women's game here. Can you believe we still don't have a professional club, that there's a place that Canadian players, if they don't want to go overseas, they've got no options here?
No, it's absolutely it has to be the legacy of this gold medal. It has to be. It's a big part of why Bev and I came back. We see the potential in this country. I think we're both people, like I said, we didn't go to England with the league where it's at now, or the England team where it's at now. We like to look for a country with the highest potential for growth. And right now, I think that's Canada. It's, how it's got to this point, I don't know, but it's fascinating to me. Not you talk about professional football, but I take it a step further and I say, the fact that this country doesn't have a league is yes. I don't know how it's got to that point, but I would say it's probably the only country in the top 50. And I think that's a fair estimate, if not higher. Now I know there's geography, I know there's, I hear all the reasons, but it absolutely has to be done. And then, the game is professional now, at the top end. And my biggest thing in my shoes is obviously I'm here to take our best 12-year-olds and do everything I possibly can to, when they're leaving at 17, I prepare them ready for whatever that next step is. But what is a little bit concerning is we have so much talent. Across this country, we have so many good players. I think we're accounting for the early developers, the ones that absolutely scream talent to you. That can be for various reasons. Usually it's the physical specimens that you see kind of come forward quickly. Jordan physically was always very advanced. And same with quite a lot of, even Jessie, yes, she was small, but she had an unbelievable engine from a young age. What I don't think we're accounting for without having a league or without having professional avenues is our top players, when they leave a Rex, or whether it's they leave their university at this point, they are competing in the NWSL with the top players in the world for a foreign spot on the rosters. Now, that's a very hard ask in the modern game to do, and some kids will be able to do it, but and fair play, that's awesome, but we also have talent that won't quite be ready for that yet at 21, 22 years old. And then to play in Europe, it's much easier if you have a European passport, which cuts out a lot of Canadians too. Or if you're not playing over 50% of games for Canada right now, which is also difficult to do because we've got a good team, or you don't have above 50 caps or whatever the limit is, then WSL is almost out the question. So when you kind of put that on the table in terms of professional avenues, we have, and with the talent pool we have, is the second biggest women's football country in the world in terms of player base, then we absolutely need a league. We need to start with a league, and I think absolutely we need professional football.
Yeah, I mean, I commentate on the UBC games, and I've seen so many talented women come through that programme with no outlet. Like Jasmine Mander's a fantastic example. She could have gone on and played pro, but there was, I guess, not the opportunities for her.
Yeah, don't tell her that though, because she's got a big head. So
well, like, now as well, like UBC and Trinity Western, there's so much talent there. Watching them play this season has been incredible. Now, obviously, there is going to be an outlet, League One BC, all the 7 teams that's coming into it next year. They all have to have women's teams, and I'm involved with TSS, and I know they've got their women's programme, and the Whitecaps now obviously have a place now for these girls to go and play. How excited are you about that opportunity? It's a semi-professional league. Probably it will end up being more amateur, I think, initially. I don't know that there's going to be a lot of money flying around, but just to have that league now and something for these girls to go and do, and the college girls to go and do when they finish their college season.
Oh, absolutely. I said it earlier, leagues are so important to this country. We're really, and one of the parts with Rex that's been really difficult, and, I probably said I got a few things wrong. Not necessarily wrong, just like the balance of things. Boys teams are great to play against technically and tactically, but to really feel the emotion of the game, which is why we all play. Women's games are important, and finding like a good level for our Rex groups to play in is so key. And yeah, I'm excited, not just for the players, like it's a kind of go, why did I feel at that point after being the head coach for 4 years that I felt I needed a different step, and I kind of look back at that answer and I'm like, a competitive outlet to keep coaching staff, to keep everyone challenged is so important too. And for our players to learn how to perform under pressure, where it's not just friendly games, and still play, a good style of football, still working towards progressive attributes that we want to see in future Canadian players. So I'm not saying like changing how you play to win. I'm saying like to learn what it takes to win is a really important part of development. And I think that's a layer we haven't had in Rex, and it's going to make Rex hit another level for sure.
In preparation for this, I read some of your old interviews that you'd done in a couple of places. And one of the things that really stood out, going back to your own playing career, was the fact that you fell out of love with the game and you took a couple of years away. What was it specifically at that time that made you fall out of love with the game, and how much has coaching rekindled that love that you have now?
Yeah, I guess it's possibly a little bit similar to some of the concepts I've talked about. I played at university, outside of my own country. I went to the States to play. Kind of just got a little bit lost in a system that I didn't know, and I think I'd always been this kid that had come through a system in New Zealand with, reasonable talent. I'd played with my U20s at 14 and I had played for about 5 years with the senior team at 22 years old. So I kind of I'd been to one World Cup, but not like I hadn't performed at a level that I should have been able to perform at either, so I don't, I think I always look back at my football and my personal playing and sort of felt like I never sort of reached everywhere I could have possibly got to. When I look back, it's more internal, but But certainly, I think what didn't help that is kind of having structures where you're sort of left to your own devices without being tracked. And I just sort of floated through it. And then trying to come back in and be super competitive at a time where John had taken the New Zealand team. I played for John Herdman in New Zealand to a complete another level. And I just, I guess like for me, I just didn't continue that path. All the best players at that point were training in New Zealand, and I was sort of having fun in America. So I needed some time to kind of figure that out for myself, and I became a teacher. So I have my master's degree in teaching. I'm an undergraduate in psychology and a master's in teaching. So I just thought, like I've always liked people, and thought maybe I'll become a teacher. I became a history teacher, so which I know seems probably quite boring. Sorry.
Well, no, because that's when I was at high school. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a history teacher, and then in the end, I ended up not going and doing history at university. And I went. I'm not very kid friendly. They annoy me. So I thought, I don't think I can be a teacher.
Yeah. No, I like similar maybe to you. I always really liked history. I had a fascination, and it sort of happened by chance because it happened through social studies. I'd studied psychology, then ended up being placed in history. I just really enjoyed it. So, and then I kind of on the side got into coaching, and then after probably 2-3 years, I then decided that I really missed the game. And sorry, long-winded version of your question, but I think sometimes it takes taking a step away to realize what you want. And I knew at that point that I had unfinished business in football. I think I have a passion particularly for those younger age groups because of that reason, because for whatever reason, it just didn't quite work out for me. But I love that side of it, because I'm like, right, how do we make this the right environment for kids to come through? And certainly, how do we keep people in the game longer? Yeah.
I mean, it's such an exciting time on the pitch for women's soccer just now in Canada, throughout the world. Obviously, it's not been a good year off the pitch for it. Everything that's happened in the NWSL, a lot of coaches resigned. The Whitecaps, obviously, historical things, there's an investigation there. When you're speaking to players, parents just now, is there a concern how safe the women's game is? Is that something that's flagged up? Are you surprised that all these things are coming out, or were you just knowing that this was a ticking time bomb that was going to come out at some point?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting time for women's sport. Like I say, women's sport just in general. This period we're in right now is going to redefine women's sport, and it's a good thing. These conversations absolutely need to be had, and they need to be brought forward in order for the game to move forward. So I think on that end that's really important. In terms of how kids kind of interact with those stories, or more like you say, it's not the kids, it's the parents that naturally would ask questions. I think because we are far more proactive in the modern game now, in this space. So our kids are always told right from the outset what processes are and what normal situations are and what abnormal situations are. We now have Safe Sport that at the start of every season, and we have a massive banner at the Rex training ground with all contact details, and so if there's ever any kind of question around that, either be a parent or a player with any kind of concern, they know that, because the problem is they may not just come to me. Yes, I'm a female, but I'm also in charge of decision making. So male, female, it actually doesn't matter. They need an outside source that they don't feel like their place will be jeopardized if something goes wrong for them, and that's absolutely needed. And our kids, from a very young age, grow up knowing that. Like I said, it's right in front of them. They get reminded of it constantly. We do safeguarding courses with our players as well, consistently across the year. So I do feel like they're far more empowered in the modern world. And like if I was a parent coming in and I didn't know these things or was outside our system, I probably would have more questions around that. But I actually haven't fielded that many actually none from parents. Now, in saying that, like I've just noted, they may not always come to me directly, but I certainly, even informal conversations, haven't really had it. And I'm hoping, and I feel like we're doing a better job of education around this. And like I said, hoping that that's actually a result of that.
Yeah, I mean, let's just hope that everything gets out and we move into next year, because it seems in the NWSL it's just every couple of weeks or months something new is coming out. But let's finish on a more positive subject. I want to ask what it was like for you watching Canada win that gold medal, seeing your wife take that team to the gold. I mean, how excited, how nervous were you? Just what was that like for you?
Oh, it's a bit of a blur. I remember getting up at like crazy hours like everyone else does, and it was sort of one of those things that like it was like, oh, we've got another game now, you know. Like the crazy part for me is I've seen many parts of Bev's journey. I've seen loads of times where she's failed. I've seen loads of times where there is no next game, when a U20s team doesn't qualify and then it feels like the end of the world, you know, like. But like it was sort of because of all of that, because of like I've kind of been on that journey, it was almost surreal that we kept going through each game. And for the penalty kicks, I was running late to get Jack to daycare, and he was screaming in the background. I was trying to entertain him, trying to tell him that mummy's on TV, while trying to like focus. So I think that took the pressure off me. I was just like, it was chaos at home, and I still haven't watched them back yet. I still haven't like taken everything in, but I just remember going for a run. I didn't know what to do with myself. Like when I dropped Jack off, I just went for a run and just like had this like massive high. You know, it was just like, you know, when you've been a part of the journey all the way, you know, I believed in everything John said from the beginning. You know, I'd seen it happen in my own country. So I knew that John was special with his development pathways, and obviously Bev's worked for John for a long time, and this time around she made it her own. You know, she took that next step on in her own way. And by the way, John with the men's doing amazing as well. Yeah. So anyone that underestimated or said a woman's coach can't do it, I bet they're eating their words now.
Yeah, I was one that had doubts, I've got to say, but it was more about how some of the male players would find his approach, and I think the ones that didn't like that approach have kind of gone out the door, and that's their loss. So
I think just knowing John, he's a winner. Like he's an absolute winner, and when you're a winner like that, you find a way. And you know, it's hard because when you're part of it, it's like, oh, everyone will think you'll say that regardless. So you can't say too much because we were obviously on the inner. But no, he changed the game here on the women's side, and you know, then Bev was lucky to follow him, and then sort of is making it her own at the moment. Yeah. So no, just being part of the whole journey, it just felt amazing.
Yeah, I spoke to Adam Day after it, and because with Canada Soccer you can't get to speak to Bev. It's like you get one question on a Zoom every now and again, and that's basically it. But it's like when he told me, oh yeah, the coaches don't get gold medals, it's like, what? Oh man, how?
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much for your time today, Emma. I could talk to you for hours. Really, really appreciate that. Good luck with everything that you're doing. Good luck with League One BC next year. Looking forward to seeing the team in that. Whitecaps Director of Women's Football Development, Emma Humphries there, just chatting all things about the Whitecaps programme, the development of the women's game in Vancouver and throughout Canada, and a lot more besides. We're going to unpack some of the things that she said and just look at the state of the women's game here in Canada at club level after this.
Hi, I'm Alfonso Davies, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's another female-fronted Canadian band, Metric. Still my favourite song of theirs from 2005's Live It Out album. That was Monster Hospital. So in this final part of this episode, we're going to just kind of unpack a few of the things that I spoke about with Emma Humphries there in the last part. Really enjoyed chatting to Emma. She was just so open and honest with everything. And we'll speak to her a lot more this year as well as League One BC gets underway. I still find it crazy that there's still not any professional female teams in Canada. The legacy of the 2015 World Cup was the hope that there was going to be at least one NWSL team. There's been talk about professional leagues here, the CPL having a female league. Now, obviously, BC League One is going to help that because there's 7 new teams coming in. Lots of opportunities for young female players to come out of college, wherever they've been playing their club soccer just now, out the academies and play in this league. So you've got all these opportunities there. You've got the college game here, which is so strong. UBC Thunderbirds, Trinity Western Spartans, 2 fantastic programmes in 2021 on the women's side. And they were just outstanding with the talent that they had on their roster. There's this new WPSL Canadian division that it's not quite what I feel they're making it out to be. And I've had a little bit of experience with WPSL in the past. TSS Rovers were in that league for a bit with their women's team. And it was a bit of an organisational nightmare at times. So hopefully that has vastly improved. But it's not what we need in Canada, Zach. It's not the professional league. League One BC is not the professional league. I guess that the first question in this to you is, can Canada support an NWSL team and support a professional league, or does it have to be one or the other? I'm talking about a top level professional league.
Yeah, I think. Well, just to be clear, I think League One BC is a good step. The problem is it doesn't feel like a big enough step for where things are at or where things.
It's a development league.
Yeah, but you need it's a definitely an important piece of the puzzle that is really, really needed. But
we're not going to be see Canadian internationals in this unless they're not able to travel because of COVID and they need somewhere to play.
Yeah, I think Canada can have its own top level women's league eventually, and I personally would prefer that to NWSL teams.
I would as well.
However, I think you're probably, my guess at this moment right now is you might see an NWSL team before you see an actual league, just because of it. Having one or two of the NWSL teams is easier than starting up a whole new league. But I mean, it's crazy to think that we won this gold medal and we still don't have a league. But
I mean, the word in the street is there are things going on behind the scenes. It's just they're not being made public.
Yes. There are people I have heard of people who are actively pursuing the possibility of NWSL for sure. An actual league and stuff, other than, that being an ideal down the road for CPL in the same way that, promotion relegation is an ideal for them down the road. I don't know if it's been discussed more than that, because they're dealing with all the financial realities of, birthing a new league and it being a toddler, and all that kind of stuff.
And 2 years of not actually having proper seasons.
Exactly. The pandemic, the pandemic couldn't make things worse. You could have if we were in a non-pandemic reality, I think Canada wins that gold medal, and there is like an announcement that a league's starting, like maybe not the following summer, but the summer after that. You know what I mean? Like if people were open to making that kind of investment with, knowing that people are going to be able to go to stadiums and support in that kind of way. But I think you ask a good question of, is there the support for it? And I think there is, but I think, like with all things when it comes to football clubs in Canada, you really have to do it in the right way. And we've seen some clubs in our country maybe stumble. Thinking about, like, for example, FC Edmonton. You're talking about the women's game. It's not hard to think of examples of clubs who've stumbled and made errors when it comes to the women's game.
You just have to look at the NWSL, because there's been a few clubs there that haven't been the most stable. There's been clubs moved, and it's a lot better than it was, and it's a lot better at NWSL than it has been with previous North American women's leagues.
Yeah.
But when I first come to Canada, there was a Whitecaps team. Ottawa had a team, and we've gone backwards, and that's just the strange thing for me, Steve. And there's no doubt there's quality players, and there's the young players coming through. There's the internationals that might want to come back depending on where they're playing, especially, I guess, the ones that's maybe more US based than ones in Europe. But I do agree with Zach, Steve. I think an NWSL team is way more likely right now than a full-blown professional league.
Yeah, the problem is that for me right now, I don't like, similar to the CPL when it first came out. Even back then for the CPL, I wasn't sure if there was enough depth, and I don't know if there's enough depth to support a whole league in in a women's soccer league. For me, the League One, I know you're not saying it's the same level, but it's a development league. It's going to develop the depth that you need to make a league coming up at the top level, and so I think that's important. I don't know. Does Ontario have a women's, like a League One? I don't think so. That you're going to be able to get players out of that. This League One in BC will do it. I'm sure Quebec has something similar as well.
So, like Emma said there as well, what's been missing is a place to get these late developers, because not everyone's going to be a 15-year-old phenom that can just suddenly go in the national team.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like there's players that's going to be 19, 20, 21, 22 that are starting to come on to their game. And I've seen so many really good players at college level the last 10 years that's just been lost to the game.
And that's the thing,
there's nothing for them.
We've talked about with Canadian men's that there was nothing between the ages of like 19 to 22 that could be a developer. For women, it's probably even a bigger gap, like 17 to 23 or something that you lose. And I think because there's no professional league, you lose those players earlier than you would the men's players. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing. I think initially, like you said, the one women's league, one women's team in the North American women's soccer league, that would probably be the first step. And I think granting them permission to do something like that will be the caveat that when the women's league opens in Canada, you come back essentially. And that's where you have to do it, and they'll have to position those teams in where it's easy to travel, because you can't have because the one thing that was always like crippling the teams in before was the travel. Like you can't it's tough for a team that's not got that much. But the one benefit for being in the women's North America, they have TV deals now, so you can get some money off that. And then before they were relying on the ticket gate all the time, and they might not have to rely that much on there. They have that TV deal in the US, and hopefully the fact that ESPN has a deal with the women's soccer league there, that the team that's in Canada, they can get a deal with either TSN or One Soccer or something like that and show it on there.
The one thing about that would be nice in the long term is if the CPL can have a women's league, is the idea of doing double headers. I mean, that was I mean, for all the tragedy and horrific things that happened, at one point or another with the Whitecaps women's team, it was nice to be able to just go to a double header.
They did that really well,
and then watch the men's team. And you got people out who wouldn't normally maybe go to the women's game, being like, "Yeah, I'm going to go to the doubleheader and watch both." I just think that in long term, if that can be a model or that can be something that could help, I think that would be quite nice.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's all about investment, and it's been hard enough to find people to put their hands in the pocket for the men's game over the years, and it's been even harder to find people to do it in the women's side. And as Emma said there, she saw it, her and Bev saw it in England. The growth of the game there came with investment. It came with existing clubs deciding, what makes us a proper club? To have a women's club as well. And so many of the league teams in England and Scotland now as well have got women's sides. Wimbledon's got a really strong women's programme, and a number of them don't play at the same stadium. So, for example, Chelsea's women used to play at Wimbledon's old ground, and then they actually bought that off Wimbledon when Wimbledon moved back to Plough Lane, and now it's Chelsea women's ground. AFC Wimbledon's women actually had played at Sutton United's ground, and now they're at Plough Lane and stuff as well. But West Ham, they worked really hard at building up their women's programme. There was TV show about it, and that got publicity for them, and it got fans in. But it also showed the reality of how hard it is to make money as well, because they were fighting for publicity. They were fighting to get fans in. And even the teams in England that have been doing well, they struggle to draw more than a few thousand. And they're very well marketed. So if there was to be an NWSL team here in Canada, let's just initially just say there was just one team. Where do you think it should be? And should it be tied to an existing club, MLS, CPL, whatever, or should it be a brand new entity?
Being tied in would probably be the best way to do it. I know having its own identity would be ideal in the fact that they stand on their own, but they also, in this kind of way, they kind of do need support. I personally would not. You'd want to see. I don't know what the layout is in the women NWSL or not. I don't know what the layout is where
East and West and stuff.
Yeah, East and West.
It feels as a lot of Eastern teams.
Yeah, so if that's the case, then I would say put it in the East right now, the first team, just because the travel benefit. If you don't have to travel.
I actually, that would Toronto. I hate to say this, but Toronto would be my choice for that exact reason as well.
Well, Toronto is another choice because if it's going to be NWSL again with the stipulation as we talked about before that they have to be in the Canadian League when it forms. I think Toronto and connected to Toronto FC and MLSE makes sense because, as far as I understand, they don't have any shortage of funds.
Yeah, as demonstrated recently.
Yeah, so I think like they have it, and again, whatever you think about Toronto, in the general Canadian psyche and all that kind of stuff, it's helpful when you have a team in like the largest, most metropolitan city in your country. I think that's not a bad first step. You know what I mean? And obviously, we would say the same for Montreal and Vancouver. I would say that, but I don't think it can be connected to the Whitecaps in any way, shape.
Now, if they want to keep the women's league as a a CPL kind of thing, the other option would be Forge, because Forge is located near Toronto. And so you're in that same metropolitan area, and it basically keeps it in the CPL family, and that way you kind of, I know it's not as much money as TFC might be able to put into it, but there's still enough money in there.
I can't remember if we talked about this or we were just messaging about it, but Scott Mitchell and Bob Young have done this new thing where they have a new partner, right? Like they have their own little MLSE type.
Yeah,
it's
interesting. They've definitely got like big plans, and getting sidetracked here, but obviously signing 2 Pacific players this week as well. Obviously, some money enticing them to there, you would imagine.
We're going to talk about that later, right?
Yeah, we will. Yeah, definitely. As well as David Clanahan resigning as CPL commissioner. But we'll focus on WOSO for now.
When do you take over CPL, Michael?
Oh, shush, we're keeping that quiet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, the plans I have. Oh, if there was 2 teams in Canada, I'd say Toronto and Vancouver as the locations for them. If it was only one, I'm erring on Toronto just because there's a lot of close by teams as well for travel and getting rivalry and excitement and stuff like that as well. Vancouver, though, so many of the women in the national team program have made their home here, have come through here, and it would be great to have the team here. I'd love to see the team here. I know it would not be easy to tie it to the Whitecaps right now because of everything that has happened and the historic allegations, and
it can't be.
I know that's the thing. That's the big thing, and then it's like, who else would take that on?
And the thing is, how interested are they in doing something like that?
They were a couple of years ago, and then I think financially it just was not. It was not worthwhile. And for all we go on about the owners and everything at the Whitecaps, their pockets are not as deep as MLSE.
Yeah.
And you have to do this right.
Yeah.
You can't just half-ass the very first Canadian NWSL team. It has to be done properly. It has to have investment. That's why I think Toronto would be the best way to go forward with this. But let's hear a little bit, some thoughts from Canadian women's national team head coach Bev Priestman on this very subject.
The gold medal performance seems to have really struck a chord with the Canadians and really given platform for your team and women's soccer. What do you hope that can be done using that platform?
Yeah, I think, we spoke about all the way through changing the colour of the medal, and then I was really clear with the group that I didn't want that US game, for as special as it was, to be our final. And so I dug really deep into what that final match would mean. And we spoke about, writing the next chapter of the women's game here in Canada and how this group going getting gold can do that. And I think what it means is, and probably what's jumped out to me, is I just feel the love for this team. And I think that jumps out to me, what this country can do now to support our pathway, to put this group of players and more on Canadian soil regularly, rather than maybe once every 4 years. It just feels like the time is right to go and get an NWSL franchise so that the very best can be playing week in, week out at home. And then, the whole professional league, what that can do for coaches, referees, much more than just even players. So I just think now's the time where this spotlight's on this group to, I think investors will come forward and we'll see the landscape of this country hopefully change forever. And that's what the motivation was for this particular group. It was like, listen, we do this. We write a new chapter, a new book on what this means for women's soccer in this country.
You've been involved with the programme here for so many years now. You've seen the excitement that the women's team generates when the Olympics is on, when the World Cup is on. But it does feel that it's like every 2 years there's this buzz about the game and then it dies down a little bit. What do you feel needs to happen, not just in getting a team, but in terms of like media coverage, to keep the women's game in the spotlight and to make sure it's not just at the big tournaments that people start to care about the team?
Yeah, I think, you know what, like going and getting a gold medal was one of the things. I think, you know, to really say we are Olympic champions, I think when you're an Olympic champion team, there's not many teams that have done that, right? Who've got on that podium and done that and done it 3 times. Now, obviously, top of the podium. So that's one. I think it cements us in the world game as a real women's football nation who, you know, people will fear, which I think has happened over the last 8 to 10 years. But now we have that gold medal. I think, again, I keep coming back to it, but I think seeing our players regularly on TV is critical. You know, I watch week in, week out, all the leagues around the world, our players doing outstanding things globally that probably they're not recognised enough for. So seeing that in the media, covering NWSL, covering leagues around the world, and then having our league or our team in Canada covered week in, week out is only going to make these heroes more heroes week in, week out, where young players, young girls, young boys can just tune in and watch their idols perform week in, week out. So I think it is that regular, that consistency that is critical to make kids dream. Like, you know, I grew up in England where the men's Premier League's on week in, week out, and you idolise, you know, who you want to be when you grow up. And I think seeing that regularly is critical. And I think that's the next step. And I have a great feeling that is going to be the change that we all want to see. And I know Canada Soccer's committed. Investors, it will happen. It's now about us all getting on board and making it happen.
So some thoughts there from Bev Priestman. Now, one of the things that Emma had said in our chat there was she feels there's a need to see our players week in and week out on TV, that the legacy of this gold medal has to be professional clubs and then ideally a league as well. And it is a case of like seeing them on TV, because young girls coming through in their formative years, their early teens, mid-teens, late teens, college players, they want to see, oh, this is what I could do. I'm seeing these women on TV every week. And DAZN, to their credit, are showing a lot of women's football now, and you don't even have to be a DAZN subscriber to watch it. They're making a lot of the women's European tournaments free for people to watch on your YouTube channels. There's the English league that's getting shown regularly on Sportsnet, and the national team games on One Soccer. We need to have a big discussion in this country about the future of football media and the accessibility to it. It's not the time for that to do that just now, but I mean, it's right. Young women, young girls need role models in this game, and if they're not seeing them on TV, then I don't know what. And the NWSL, you just can't watch it here without going to extreme lengths or subscribing, I think, to CBS you have to do, and even then I'm not even sure how well that works.
Yeah, and the thing is that you get there's been already an effect in having like 3 MLS teams, whether there's top Canadians on there or not, already in the ranks of the men's soccer. And then the one, obviously the women's have been, obviously the national team has been inspirational to a lot of players as well. Yeah. And then as well on the men's side, we have yet to see what the Alphonso Davies effect has had. It's very similar. I know Crossing Sports and Sex is basically the Vince Carter effect on Toronto's basketball. When he played back there, that had a massive effect in the number of players that have come out of Toronto area because of that one player has been huge. So these kind of things, you're 100% right. When you see somebody on your local team, or a national team or something like that playing at a top level, it makes a massive effect in the recruitment of young players to that sport.
And I think if we're realistically looking at how the game is going to develop here, it is starting off with an NWSL team and then some semi-professional leagues. I'd love the WPSL thing to work out. I'm just a little bit sceptical on that as to I think they're trying to make it out to be the answer to what we're looking for, and it's very far off that. And League One BC is going to be very exciting. And as I said, there's so much great talent in the colleges and academies here. But they have to see it on TV, Zach. They have to have these role models. They have to have investment. And it's no use just seeing the women's team on TV at the Olympics and the World Cup every 2 years. The excitement's always high, and then it just tails back off again.
No, it's not. And that's the another thing for me that points to TFC and MLSC being a good thing a potential good thing for an NWSL team in Canada is if they did it right and they really invested in it, they could like dominate NWSL. Mm-hmm. And what would grow things and build things and create more excitement than them, putting a dominant team in that league and winning, you know what I mean? Like, imagine the kind of groundswell that would add to for our own league and or other teams in NWSL until we can, fully go it alone ourselves. I don't know.
There's also, like, whenever this has been talked about a Canadian side, there, like, a lot of the behind the scenes chatter appears to be concern from US soccer that Canada suddenly stacks a team full of Canadian national team players, thus boosting Canada in the process as well and taking away from America on the international level. So there is a concern that you're basically going to have Team Canada as an NWSL team.
Yeah.
And they do sweep everyone out of the way.
Yeah, but NWSL hasn't come out and said they don't want expansion to Canada. And to me, they're not in a solid enough place, right, where they
could turn away anybody.
Where they could say, no, we're not going to take you.
But I also feel if they really, really wanted one, there would have been a team by now. They would have made that work.
Maybe.
But but the thing is with the TFC, like you're saying, the money that they have, they need to bring in at least 2 to 3 players that are noteworthy. It doesn't have to be a Christine Sinclair, because I don't see Christine Sinclair leaving Portland ever to go to another team at this point.
That's her home.
But if you could bring a Janine Becky or Jessie Fleming, I know one or two of them have just moved. Oh, I know Jessie Fleming just moved to Europe recently, or who was it? Julia Grosso.
Yeah,
Grosso moved to Juventus.
Well, like Bill Manning's probably going to be checking transfer market to see when contracts are expiring and just coming up with a list of players, I'm sure.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of bringing those players over. If you have to pay a transfer fee, you have to pay a transfer fee as well, right? It's good to bring some Canadians over instead of just Italians all the time.
Who knows? Maybe one day we'll see Jordan Huitema back wearing TSS colours. Well, we can live in hope. But that is pretty much it for our chat about the women's game here in Canada. Hope you've enjoyed it. I know we don't cover this a lot on the show. We would love to cover women's soccer a lot more. Canada Soccer do not make it easy to get access to the top female players and get decent chats and interviews with them. So hopefully that is something that can change as well, not just for us, but for all outlets, because that's how you grow the game, having better media coverage. And then we'll certainly be doing a lot of coverage both on the podcast and on the site for League One BC from the men and the women's side as well. So let us know what you'd like to see us cover.
Yeah, and from what I've heard of in the past from other people, now I'm not myself because I unfortunately don't have the time to cover anymore, but it's not easy to cover the men's team either.
Yeah, Canada Soccer don't make it easy sometimes, just in general. But we've still got time to bring you this episode's wavelength, and because this has been primarily a show about women's soccer, I was trying to find a football song about the women's game, and it was not easy, because there does not appear to be too many of them. So I had said last week that for this month we're playing songs about national teams, either sung by the national teams themselves or by bands about the national teams. And I said it wasn't going to be all about Scotland. But for the second week in a row, I've gone with a song about the Scottish national team. This is about the Scotland women's national team that made the World Cup finals for the first time in 2019. It's a song by Neil Grant, who we interviewed back on the show, back in episode 456, I believe it was. This is his song for that 2019 World Cup run. This is called Give It All we've got. Scottish singer-songwriter Neil Grant there with his song for Scotland's 2019 Women's World Cup team. That was Give It All, We've Got. But that is it for this episode of the show. We hope you've enjoyed the Whitecaps chat. We hope you've enjoyed the women's soccer chat. Just before we go though, guys, let everyone know where they can find you online. Any final thoughts or just anything that you've learned this week, Steve?
When you want to maintain stuff, it's always better to use briefs than boxers. You can find me on Twitter at Whitecapspeed.
Are you a boxers or a brief guy, Zach? Or commando?
My preference actually is the boxer brief.
Yes, mine too. Everyone can picture us now in our boxer briefs.
You can find me on Twitter at ZacharyAM. And
send us pictures of you in your boxer briefs.
The thing I learned, I guess my reflection for this episode is I just want to give a shout out to Michael's good friend, Snakebite Peter Wright, on his world championship victory in the darts. I watched the darts for the first time ever.
Yes, I know. I was very excited. We were messaging back and forward. What did you think of it?
It was good. I was talking to a mutual friend of ours. And they're like, I was like, oh, what are you doing now? They're like, oh, I'm going to watch the darts. And I was like, are you serious? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay. I was like, and I had nothing to do, or it was like one of those days I was on holiday. It's like, oh, I'll put on the darts and see what all this fuss is about. I heard Michael talk about it. So I put it on and I text you. And then I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. Far more entertaining than I thought it would be.
It's fantastic. I've got my dartboard set up here. Once Omicron's all gone, let's get an AFTN darts night going. We'll video it. We'll do our games night. We'll get all our videos done as well. It's a mobile board. It's on a thing, so I can take it to somewhere more central.
Last time I played darts was after a game in Langford. We were on our way home. We stopped to eat at a pub, and there was darts, and it was fun. But yeah, I'd be up for that.
I bought this dart stand when I was last over in the UK 2 years ago, because my plan was, I think I've spoken about this before in the show, to take it to Whitecaps training and do some darts challenges with the Whitecaps players and film it. And then a month later, COVID came, and I've never been able to do that, because who wants to handle other people's darts during a pandemic? Anyway, we'll get round to that at some point. We will also get round to our football board games that we're going to be doing on a special channel as well. That was something else I brought back from the UK on that trip and have never been able to use. One day. But that is it for this episode. I'm Michael McCall. Give me a follow on Twitter at AFTN Canada. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/AFTN Canada, just in case we ever do get these videos up. And we've been having some chats about some other fun videos that we might like to do. I guess I've learned from all this darts chat that Zach is a big fan of 3 in a Bed now, so that is a good thing. We'll get him kissing the lipstick and everything by the end of this year. But that is it for now. We will be back soon with another show. Until then, thanks for listening. Take care. Mon the Whitecaps, and mon women's soccer.
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful, and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world, away from the numbers, away from the numbers.